Well, a good Thursday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in for a look at your extended forecast here on 13 WMAZ+. We are trending better and better as we head into your 4th of July weekend ahead. So we'll talk about why that is, and we'll talk about some things that are still up for debate and maybe could change as we head into the end of your weekend forecast. First things first, let's recap the day before's rainfall totals, and you can see that your 24-hour rainfall totals, not much to be found here in Central Georgia. The rain was very widely scattered yesterday, but it still did produce some locally heavy amounts, maybe up to about 2 inches in total right here on the county line of Putnam and Hancock counties, right there between Lake Sinclair and Lake Oconee. Another little patch of green just to the south and southwest of Sparta. But most areas just found themselves getting a minimal trace of rain, like downtown Dublin, not even recording 1/10 of an inch in Lawrence County. Close to an inch in some spots right there on the county lines of Wheeler and Montgomery counties, 3/10 of an inch down in South Wilcox County. Over by Americus, about 1.5 inches of rain. Some spots over in eastern Taylor County, right around the Reynolds area, just over an inch. And then just shy of an inch in parts of Lamar County, right on the county line of Monroe County. But Macon, Warner Robins, Milledgeville probably recorded a little bit of a trace. Jeffersonville, Cochran, getting down to Hawkinsville, Perry, those areas didn't find anything in the way of rain over the course of yesterday. So still very widely scattered, more likely than not that you are going to receive some nice and sunny weather as opposed to receiving maybe a stray shower or a storm over the next couple of days, very similar to yesterday. So let's go over the numbers. 90 was our high temperature yesterday, so that falls 3 degrees below average for this time of year, and it falls 13 degrees shy of the record back in 1954, 103. Still haven't seen our first triple-digit high temperature of 2025. Our average low was a little bit below what we actually hit. 71 was the average low, and then our actual low was 73 yesterday morning because of some cloud cover that we did have present. Didn't record anything in the way of rain yesterday at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, so our year departure dropped from about 4.9 to 4.78 inches above average, still hovering around that 5-inch mark, and it does look like we can still enter a pretty good dry spell and have a good cushion to stay above average, and a dry spell looks to be in order over the course of this weekend. So a few chances at rain today and tomorrow. Saturday, it's looking even less likely that we'll actually see anything in the way of rain. It may be predominantly dry, but we'll go over what the latest run of Future View has to say about that. Staying hot all weekend. Definitely nothing in terms of heat advisory criteria. Maybe not even feels like temperatures to the triple-digit mark, but it still will be hot. A pretty average day by summer standards. Overall, it is looking to be a great 4th of July weekend. Many folks getting off of work after today, taking tomorrow off. Or maybe you have to work tomorrow and then you're heading out of town sometime in the afternoon and evening hours. We'll go over all those scenarios and kind of what your forecast is looking like if you do have plans to travel out of town. The forecast for Central Georgia is looking great, but other areas maybe not so much. Plenty of blue sky has been the trend and the theme this morning on all 4 of our sky cams. You can see some higher level clouds, so some thin wispy clouds, what we like to call cirrus clouds. They're higher up in the atmosphere and not necessarily blocking too much sunshine. So we can find them present on some of the sky cam images. Overall, it's just a nice and sunny start to your day. But we did have clouds in the forecast around this time the past 2 days, and that kept temperatures at bay. They were still somewhere in the 70s, maybe a few areas eclipsing the 80-degree mark. Well, now everyone is in the 80-degree party. Low 80s to mid 80s. At the warmest, I see an 86 up in Eatonton, 86 down in Vidalia. But what's in store in terms of those dew point temperatures? Well, this morning we've seen a lot of light green color farther up to the north and the northwest that did extend down into many of our western counties here in Central Georgia. And we do see some patchy areas of some very dark green, especially over to the east of I-75 and down on the I-75 South corridor, Dooley County, Chris County. Once again, having some dew point temperatures in the upper 70s. So that's going to do a number for the feels like temperatures, definitely enhance those well up into the 90s, I do imagine. So taking a look at your humidity levels as a whole, there's still patchy areas of dark green all across the southeast, but the big story is going to be these shades of the light green color, which will continue to filter in behind our frontal boundary over the course of today. So as we go into the afternoon hours, we'll actually look at this dark green color to continue to get pushed down towards the south and the southeast. So there is some relief in sight, and we're already starting to feel a little bit of that drier air in some locations. If you live in Gordon, you are not feeling any difference from the last couple of days. It already feels like the triple digits mark, seeing a little patch of pink right here on the corner of northern Lawrence, eastern Wilkinson, southern Washington, and western Johnson counties. Very similarly, this was an area that did have some patchy fog this morning, so that was pretty quick to dissipate and lift up into the atmosphere. Plenty of feels like numbers above the 90-degree mark, but over here towards the west, those areas that I was mentioning had some of that light green shade this morning. Your feels like numbers are somewhere pretty close to where your actual temperatures are. Mid 80s, maybe stretching into the upper 80s, like Macon at 88, 89 down in Bleckley County, 88 down in Eastman, but our fair share of some 90s. So a pretty good spread on the feels like temperature, not feeling the same in every location in central Georgia coming up on the 11 a.m. hour. Winds and wind gusts, they are relatively calm right now. Some very faint shades of blue that you can see over by Upson County, maybe getting up into our north and northeastern counties. But overall, we're not looking at the winds to be much of a factor today. But going into tomorrow and Saturday, the winds will become more of a factor, and we'll talk about why that is. But first things first, in terms of the heat index, expected to top out around the 100-degree mark, 2, 3, and 4 o'clock. So this is pretty consistent. We haven't seen many of the heat index meteograms of recent days pop up a triple-digit mark because of those rain chances, and maybe some of them were picking up on some rain chances here in the Macon area, but it doesn't look like we have much in the way of rain, so we should continue to warm up accordingly without any of that rain-cooled air influencing the feels like numbers. Here's a look at your satellite and radar pictures. Some clouds may be moving in from the north and the northwest, but overall in central Georgia, can't find much in the way of cloud cover and can't find anything in the way of rain. Let's take a big picture view of the entire state of Georgia, and there are more clouds up to the north near the metro Atlanta area, Athens, the North Georgia mountains, but there's a lot denser cloud cover over to the west of us. Nonetheless, we still really can't find anything in the way of rain here down in the southeast. And we take a look at our surface map. Number one, it's going to be because of high pressure that is centered just to the north of us and back over on the border of Arkansas and Missouri. This high pressure is going to continue to dry out the atmosphere at the surface level. Now, if you get some areas of more humid air a little bit higher up in the atmosphere, it still can create some rain chances. But as long as there's some dry air somewhere, whether it's at the surface, whether it's a little bit farther aloft, it's going to do a number in terms of limiting those precipitation chances. But this boundary, it continues to push down towards the south and the southeast. It has been hanging out in the southeast for about 3 days now, just giving you an idea of how slow in motion that this boundary is. And right now, it's still remaining stationary, meaning that it's a clash of two air masses and this boundary is not moving whatsoever. So to the north and the northwest of it, that's where you're going to find your slightly drier air and maybe even somewhat your slightly cooler air. We only really see an influence on the cooler air in the morning hours. We saw some upper 60s today, and we haven't seen those as of recent days. But down to the south and the southeast of the boundary, that's where you're still going to be locked in your warmer air, your muggier air. It's kind of a dividing line between those two, although it's not correlating necessarily with the humidity levels right now, but it will more so later this afternoon. So taking a look at your almanac today, same average low, same average high of 71 and 93 degrees respectively. And now taking a look at your record, 104 back in 1970, and your record low, 63 degrees. That's one of the warmest record lows we've seen recently. So it does mean that the 50s are less and less common. Of course, it's July. If we had some morning low temperatures in the 50s, that would definitely be a bit of a shell shock. But 1918 is when we set that record low. Sunrise this morning was at 6:31. Sunset at 8:46. Don't think those varied from yesterday. So here's your forecast for today. A little bit of patchy fog this morning. Most of the fog was all around central Georgia, but we did see some build in that Four Corners area of Lawrence, Wilkinson, Washington, and Johnson counties that I mentioned, but it was really thin in nature. Heat indices near 100 is the main headline I wanted to make known today because some areas are still going to have that muggy air that you can wear, and with temperatures increasing a little bit from the past couple of days, a high of 93, which is right on par for average this time of year. Of course, it's going to feel a couple degrees warmer where the muggy air is, but if you have some of that slightly drier air, that light green color, temperatures are going to feel a lot more accurate of what that actual temperature reads. Maybe near 93 degrees, a little bit warmer, 94, 95 degrees could be possible, but you still see that pesky thunderstorm icon. So let's see what Future View has to say about the rest of today. Scattered showers as soon as just after lunchtime, like we've seen the pattern day after day, and basically getting on month after month now. You get your temperatures warmer, you have plenty of that surface moisture, and it can contribute to some scattered showers. There is a slim chance of maybe seeing a storm today. If you see a storm, it's not going to be anything of the severe criteria. It's just going to be your run-of-the-mill, low-wind summertime thunderstorms. You'll get a couple of strikes of lightning, hear some rumbles of thunder, some pockets of heavy rain, maybe even a little bit of some gusty winds, but overall, non-severe thunderstorms is what we would be looking at, and I think that's going to be present farther down to the south and the southeast, where the muggy air is going to remain in place today. And it does look like maybe indicating a little bit of a line of some sea breeze storms like we saw on Monday down in our south and southeasternmost counties. Now let's transition into the 4th of July itself. The morning is going to be absolutely splendid, just like each and every morning so far this week. And then we go into the afternoon hours where we're getting a shift in flow now. We're going to start to see flow come in from the north and the northeast. So this is going to be very indicative of kind of a wedge setup. Some of that cooler and drier air up to the north and the northeast, kind of getting wedged down into central Georgia possibly, courtesy of the Appalachian Mountains acting as a bit of a guide. But we still could see our fair share of some scattered showers, maybe even a low-end thunderstorm. Chances are you're probably going to remain dry as opposed to receiving anything in the way of rain. And the last two runs of Future View have hinted that our south and southeasternmost counties probably have the better chance of seeing a scattered thunderstorm, but going to be very brief and very short-lived if you see anything in the way of rain. And then just as quick as it pops up on the map, you can see it's gone by about 10 p.m. right there. After we lose the surface heating, we should go into a nighttime that is going to be very, very nice, very pleasant in nature, because that's just kind of the trend that we see. We lose the warmer temperatures, and then the humidity is really only going to be present the farther south and southeast that you live, but still can't rule out a pesky rain shower or a pesky storm for the afternoon and evening hours on Friday. But now let's go into Saturday. It has not been picking up on rain whatsoever, and it is still maintaining that basis, except for these areas down in the south and the southeast here in central Georgia, and this will go all the way into Sunday at 3 a.m. Saturday probably looking to be the best of the bunch, but you did see those wind arrows just a little bit ago when we were into Saturday afternoon. We are going to see our fair share of some gusty winds present Saturday afternoon, and that's going to be because of this. We've been monitoring it all week long, and we've just continued to see these chances of development increase. So now, as of 8 a.m., the latest update from the National Hurricane Center, this potential area of development has a 20% chance of developing over the next 48 hours. So that's going to be all the way until Saturday at 11 a.m. I think it's going to be a little bit past that. Sometime into the middle of Saturday would be the chance for potential development with this tropical system right here, because there is a 60% chance of developing over the next 7 days, but that's not really saying all the way into next week. It's just covering the bases past that 48-hour time period. Something else we've noticed with this, earlier this week, we saw this shaded area extend farther over to the west, back into the northeast Gulf. Well, we have seen good agreement over the past 24 hours or so. Whatever forms is going to be over in the western Atlantic Ocean, off the Atlantic coast of Florida, and then it's going to continue to try to meander its way up the Atlantic coast of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. That's going to go ahead and give you an idea about which areas are going to be a little bit messy this weekend for any of your holiday festivities. So you have plans to travel to coastal Georgia, coastal South Carolina, coastal North Carolina. Probably towards the end of Saturday into Sunday, that's when your fair share of rain is going to pop up into the picture. But we'll go over the specifics with that as we go into your long-range future view where we can pick up Sunday. So right now, back here at home in our neck of the woods, we're looking good to go in terms of your forecast all throughout the next 3 days, all the way into the end of your Saturday. But let's talk about those winds, because I did mention they would be a factor as we go throughout the next couple of days. And yes, you see it right here. Not necessarily seeing too gusty of winds today and tomorrow, maybe a little bit tomorrow, but the big story will be Saturday, because number one, this is in the afternoon hours, plenty of the yellow shade across areas on the Atlantic coast. So some gusts up to 25, maybe even 30 miles per hour could be possible Because we're fairly close to the center of circulation, you can see that the models are organizing something potentially tropical. So these tropical systems, they're going to have that counterclockwise rotation, and that's what you can see, kind of right to left over there off the Atlantic coast. Areas closer to the coast will have gustier winds than we have here a little bit farther inland. Also, wanted to note that the closer you are to that center of circulation, the better your rain chances are, because that's where more moisture is going to sit. So we could see our fair share of an inland breeze as we go into Saturday afternoon, but it could be paired up with some slightly drier air, so that breeze is going to feel a lot better than breezes than when we have these dew point temperatures in the upper 70s, near 80 degrees. So your pool forecast for today, 93 for a high temperature. Of course, it's going to feel warmer in some spots, like mid to upper 90s, maybe near the 100-degree mark. But if you have some drier air present, it's going to feel pretty accurate of that 93-degree mark. Slimmer rain chances than yesterday. I know I had that on there for this graphic yesterday, but I just want to reiterate the point that the rain chances continue to decrease day by day. So today we'll have slimmer rain chances than yesterday, and yesterday had slimmer rain chances than the day before on Tuesday. This time the breeze is going to be from the north, steady about 5 to 10 miles per hour, but if you do catch yourself getting a low-wind thunderstorm, some gusts greater than 15 miles per hour are going to be possible in some localized areas. But finally, right on par, still a great day and a great afternoon to go enjoy the pool. Make sure that you're keeping your body cool from some of these hot temperatures. And we're going to continue that beautiful forecast into this weekend. Let's take a look at your next 3 days. Focus a little bit on today. You'll just see the 30% chance of rain that I do have. That's a 30% chance of a shower or a storm. But what that also means is a 70% chance that you don't see rain whatsoever, and you're just going to be dealing with some partly cloudy skies, high temperatures in the low 90s. We bump up a little bit to tomorrow. I've been talking about it, that 4th of July has been the warmest day forecasted on the 7-day forecast. Well, not anymore, because we are expecting a temperature increase into the middle of next week. But still, it will be a fairly warm day, and then a 20% chance of a shower, maybe seeing a storm. And once again, I think it's mainly going to be in those areas where you still are holding on to a little bit of the humidity. And if you do see temperatures near 95 paired up with some of the humidity like we have right now, it's definitely going to feel above the triple digits. But then there's a bit of a downtick as we go into Saturday. How about a high of 92 degrees? Some drier air will be in place, only a 10% chance of rain. And then obviously the note that I did add, going to be a pretty windy day. That's going to be the main thing you notice on Saturday, but overall a little bit cooler than today and tomorrow. And it will be paired up with that drier air, so the breeze will feel pretty pleasant. So we've been talking about your 4th of July travel forecast each and every day. Tuesday and Wednesday, we started seeing more people on the roads, increased volume in that traffic. Well, today for Thursday is going to be your first day of heavy traffic that you can expect for the holiday weekend. Like I said, many people probably taking off work today or having tomorrow off of work. So starting at noon all the way until we get into the nighttime hours at about 8 p.m., expect some heavier congestion on the roads. And if you don't want to travel today, well, good news for you. The 4th of July tomorrow itself, expecting a lot lighter traffic than what we've seen over the past couple of days, because most people will already be at their destinations for the holiday weekend. But then Saturday into Sunday into Monday, we see another uptick in that traffic, specifically Sunday. Many people heading back into town, got to get ready for the new work week starting next Monday. Or some people are taking that extra PTO day on Monday. We could still see greater than normal traffic on the roads and greater than normal traffic on your Saturday. Maybe some folks working on the holiday, heading out of town on Saturday. So trying to cover the bases with that. And again, this travel forecast is for those main highways all across Georgia. I-75, I-16, I-85, I-20, whatever interstate that you're really taking out of town, that's what the forecast is for. If you take some back roads to any destination, you're more than likely going to look at pretty normal traffic, maybe a little bit of an increase, but hopefully not too many people crowding the roads. So let's talk about your afternoon high temperatures, that steady increase into Friday, back down into the lower 90s for Saturday and Sunday, and then we go into Monday where we pop back up into the mid 90s, overall hovering around that average mark of 93 all weekend long. But what you want to know is how it's going to feel outside. So I did mention as we head into the afternoon, we're going to see more of that light green color on the humidity map, because that frontal boundary has continued to move over towards the east and the southeast. So we will see that drier air try to filter into those areas north of the boundary. There's still our fair share of areas in the dark green color farther over to the east, and that's going to correlate to your better chances of seeing rain today. Then as we go overnight each and every night, we'll see a little fluctuation with these dark green shaded areas, because typically when you go into the overnight hours, you see an increase in the humidity, and then as you go into the afternoon, not necessarily as humid. So for tomorrow afternoon, plenty of drier air up to the north, but it is still muggy down here in parts of central Georgia and especially down in the southern portion of Georgia, south and southeast Georgia, where you saw maybe that one thunderstorm cell on future view. That's correlating with where you do see some dark green shades. And then Saturday morning going to start out noticeably humid. But take a look at what happens during the afternoon. Even some shaded areas, or not even, I was going to say shaded areas, some areas of no color whatsoever. That's going to indicate some spotty dew points that are in the 50s, which we haven't seen in quite some time. So it does look like that north and northeasterly breeze takes over, starts to funnel down some of that really dry air down into North Carolina, South Carolina, and eventually into East Georgia. But over towards the coast, there's plenty of dark green shades, and you're starting to see some of those wind arrows circulating right there to the southeast of us, just around the Jacksonville area. So that's going to be your tropical moisture that's going to ride along the coast. And we typically see the coastal areas have more humidity in the forecast. Once you get to this time of year, you get that inland sea breeze. Sometimes it can span a little bit farther inland, like up here into central Georgia, but typically it does remain pretty small scale, and it just goes from the coast to maybe a couple of the nearby cities that are right there on the coast. So for your feels like temperatures today, especially over towards the east, we will see some spotty areas of pink. That would be feels like temperatures of the triple digits. But mid 90s, upper 90s, around 100 later on today. Not much rain to cool us down from those values. Tomorrow, very similar, mid to upper 90s. Farther south that you live, you have more moisture content. You could see some feels like numbers flirting with the 100-degree mark. And then we go into Saturday, where this looks like a real treat. Feels like numbers of the low 90s right now. Hopefully we can keep that true to how it actually feels. But overall, Saturday is looking to be the best of the bunch over the course of the next 3 days, and including on Sunday. But let's pick it up with the long-range models, where we are seeing very good agreement of some organization amongst the GFS and the European model of this potential tropical system. Now, obviously, it's probably going to form sometime maybe around the middle of the day or in the second half of the day on Saturday. So we continue this to 9 a.m. on Sunday. You see that timestamp right there. I just want to move over here so I can kind of point out what's going on. This is going to continue to ride up the Atlantic coast. And you can see this area right here, the yellow, the red, the pink shaded areas, indicating good agreement and maybe more intense rainfall in nature. So whatever does try to form, and it does look increasingly likely that this will form into an organized named system, may try to make a landfall somewhere around the Atlantic coast of South Carolina into North Carolina. So I did mention your forecast, and those coastal areas going to be a bit messy. I do believe it's mainly South Carolina and North Carolina, maybe more so Georgia and Florida on Saturday when the system's trying to get its act together. But overall, I do think maybe on the right side, or excuse me, the left side of where this center of circulation is. So take this area, drag it down just a little bit. These areas on the coast of Georgia and Florida, just more so dealing with some spotty showers, some on again and off again rain. Looks like big swaths of continuous rain and heavy downpours are going to exist more so Sunday morning, maybe when the system moves onshore to North Carolina. So then we go into Sunday at 11 p.m. But the big thing that you see here back home in central Georgia, not much rain in the state of Georgia. We could see some maybe weak upper level system that tries to produce some rain in states like northern Georgia, northern Alabama, Mississippi, getting into Tennessee, but that's far from certain. That's just what one model says. The GFS, the European in blue, was not getting along with that. Monday at 7 p.m., still predominantly dry in the state of Georgia. We continue that trend into Tuesday, but by the time we get to Tuesday, we'll probably see a bit of a rebound in those humidity levels start to increase back up. So some spotty showers, maybe even a pop-up thunderstorm could be back in the forecast, more of a typical summertime day. Then we go into Wednesday, still spotty showers going to be possible, but then once we go into Wednesday night, more so Thursday, we could see our fair share of some moisture all around us, more widespread rain chances, but we'll worry about that when we get there. It does look like some better chances of rain are in store by this time next week. So speaking of some of those hurricane names, I did hint at the fact that we do have increased chances of seeing our next named storm, which would be Chantal. We had Tropical Storm Andrea in the North Atlantic, and that was a fish storm, didn't impact any land masses. Barry was not a fish storm. It did form over in the Gulf, and then it moved on shore to eastern Mexico. That dry desert terrain really allowed Barry to weaken very, very quickly. However, it had its fair share of tropical moisture that it dumped on that desert terrain, resulted in some inland flooding because the sandy terrain of the desert is pretty easily saturated and it can create things like some landslides and such. Didn't see terribly many reports of some extensive damage associated with Tropical Storm Barry. But Chantal is the next name on the list. No other areas that we're monitoring for potential development, and it does look increasingly likely that by the time we get to Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, we will see our third named storm, Chantal, on the 2025 hurricane list. And once again, showing you the hurricane frequency, because over the last week or two, we've actually seen a little bit of an uptick in activity, but we're still hovering in this kind of range right here where we're not seeing much tropical activity whatsoever. It's really once we start to get into about the next week, we'll start to see a steady uptick in activity. And then once we get into the month of August, that's where activity starts to get a little more frequent, but not as frequent as the official peak of the season, which will be on September 10th. And then after September 10th, the frequency of activity will go down. But most of the storms that we've seen in recent years that have impacted many areas of the southeast have come mainly in the months of September, maybe into early October, but can't rule them out as you go into the month of August as well. And then something to look forward to. The hurricane season will officially end on November 30th, but that still is a ways away. And obviously, we're still in a very less frequent time of hurricane season. So 7-day forecast, a little bit of an uptick in the temperatures. However, we will see some slightly drier air, so those feels like numbers aren't going to be as high for your Friday and your Saturday, more so your Saturday. Friday probably still going to have patchy areas that do have feels like numbers near the triple digits. 92 and 91 for Saturday and Sunday. Absolutely cannot wait for Saturday. It's going to be a splendid day. Slightly lower temperatures, definitely that drier air making its presence known, along with that breeze that will be blowing all afternoon long into the evening hours, and the slimmest chances of rain over the next couple of days. But there is a downtick in the rain chances each and every day now until Friday into July 5th on Saturday. A little bit of an uptick on Sunday, but we'll get that in range of short range future view this time tomorrow. We may bump that down to about a 10% if we see a very similar scenario to what's playing out on Saturday right now. But then as we go into next week, starting the work week off, that second full week of July, 94 into 95 and 95 for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. If we get a rebound in the humidity, then of course, feels like numbers are going to be back near the triple digits and more than likely above the triple digits. But hopefully we don't see anything in the way of heat advisories issued. We haven't seen that outlined by the National Weather Service yet. And they typically like to get ahead of the punch when it comes to issuing heat advisories. They'll kind of let us know whenever those are going to be likely conditions for issuing one. Haven't seen that just yet, but we will rebound back to this typical 20 to 30% chance of a shower or storm each day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And just because I have that icon on today and tomorrow does not mean that you're going to see anything in the way of rain. Once again, just like yesterday, most areas are going to dodge the rain, but a select few areas could catch a low-end thunderstorm, not thinking anything in the way of severe weather, but just want those areas that do catch a storm to be prepared for all the possible elements, but a predominantly dry forecast today, tomorrow, and Saturday, and I think it's looking predominantly dry for Sunday still. All of these chances are very, very slim. 30% at the most still means 70% chance that you do remain dry. And then you get into 20, of course, 80% chance that you stay dry, 90% chance that you stay dry on Saturday. So just look forward to the beautiful forecast if you are staying here at home in Central Georgia this weekend. If you're heading out of town, I do believe the Panhandle, you'll have your fair share of spotty showers, maybe even some storms. Just down there, it's the summertime months, but it's not looking to be organized and not looking to be a continuous rain associated with this tropical system. It's those coastal areas of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina that are looking a bit iffy. So may want to bring the rain jacket, may want to pack the umbrella if you're heading out of town today to travel to those areas. But overall, maybe some spotty showers at the very least. And South Carolina and North Carolina, I have a lot greater confidence and kind of being a washout forecast. But luckily that looks to be mainly just for Sunday as opposed to most of your weekend. That'll do it for a look at your extended forecast. We'll be back here for a very American look at your extended forecast this time tomorrow.